Hi all, so I thought I'd do some reviews of the stoves that I've been using, and today I've got two gas canister stoves and two alcohol or spirit stoves. So the first one we're going to look at is the MSR Pocket Rocket, and my son and I used this on our Appalachian Trail hike, so it was used for 5.5 months, sometimes once a day, sometimes 3 times a day, but it had extensive use, and as you can see it's still in good condition. The next stove is the Trangia spirit stove, and this is the small version. And then they have the Vargo Triad alcohol stove. And finally the Snow Peak Light Max. The first part of this video is going to be inside, and all I'm going to do is a simple review, weights and measures, and then a boil time test. So the first stove is the original stove that we used, and that's the MSR Pocket Rocket. It actually comes in this container, which keeps it clean and stops it damaging any other equipment, etc., because these obviously jagged edges could catch into anything. So a nice little storage box. Uses standard gas canister. On the trail we carried 2 of these, 1 each, so that as one died, then the other one could start being used, and then when we got into resupply we just replaced the empty cylinder with a new one, and that way we constantly knew that we would have gas and we'd never run out. The actual stove itself, the legs just move open, and then the control lever pops out, and that's it. You just add it then to the canister, and obviously it's ready to go once you've lit it. So if we look at the actual stove itself, on its own, as you can see, it weighs 3 ounces. Simply just attach it to your gas canister, and it's got a rubber seal here to make sure that the seal between the canister and the actual stove doesn't leak. So if we look at some basic measurements, the actual stove is 4 inches in height when it's folded down, and at its widest about 2.25. When you open it up, the maximum span is about 4 inches. And once put together, the total height is 6 inches when it's ready to cook. So for the boil test, and I'm going to do this for all 4 of the stoves, I'm going to be using the same equipment. That is a titanium Evernew cooking pot. The water, which is going to be taken from the same jug here, and it's being kept at room temperature, and then a thermometer. I'm going to raise the temperature to boiling point and time it from start to finish. So for each boil test, I'm going to boil 15 ounces of water. Fortunately, with this titanium pot, it's actually graduated on the inside for different measurements. So there we go, rolling boil, 100 degrees Celsius, and that took 3 minutes 21 seconds. So the next stove is the Snow Peak Light Max, and I actually got this second hand. It was in good condition when I got it, although it was used. Gas control lever just folds out, as in the Pocket Rocket, but this time the legs rotate round and then are extended by lifting up these parts and locking them into place. Weight is 2 ounces. When folded down, its height is around 3 inches and maximum across is about 2.5 inches. Uses the standard gas canister that you get any resupply or outdoor store. So height when ready to cook, 5.5 inches. So same again, 15 ounces of water. So there we are, 100 degrees Celsius, 3 minutes, 59.99 seconds. So 4 minutes, almost dead on. Next is the Trangia stove. This is an alcohol stove. Comes in 3 parts. Top is a simmer ring. There's a small handle here which allows you to adjust the amount of flame coming out the stove when you're using it, or once it's lit you can actually snuff the stove. Next is a lid. And this has an O-ring in so that it can contain the contents that you haven't used inside the stove, and then the stove itself. And if you look around the edge of the rim here, there's a series of small holes. Once you prime the stove, the flames start to come out of this rim here. So combined weight, 4.1 ounces. The stove stands around 1 3/4 inches in height, and across it's about 2.5 inches. For this review I'm going to be using heat. I also use a stand, and this is a stand that I purchased off eBay, and the stove fits neatly inside. So I'm just going to add heat to the actual stove. And then place it inside the stand. I'm putting the stove onto this foil sheet just to protect the surface. As before, I've added 15 ounces of water to my titanium pot. But this time I'm going to prime the actual stove by lighting it, and it takes between 30 seconds to a minute for the stove to prime. And then so now you can see the flames are starting to bloom and come out the small holes around the ring. So there we are. Rolling boil in 5 minutes, 33 seconds, 0.36. So here's the Vargo Triad titanium stove. Very small, as you can see. These legs actually fold out, and if you was outside you'd push these into the ground to make it solid. And then these legs at the top, they actually hold your pot. Now what I have seen is you could use the stove this way up with something like an S-bit fuel block and just burn it with that solid fuel. But for this review I'm going to be using heat. So obviously extremely light is one of the benefits of this, and 0.9 of an ounce is what I'm recording. Measurement across 2¼ inches, and then folded down 1 inch. This one has a hole in the middle. This is for the fuel to go into, and then the holes on the outside are where the flame come out. So fully standing, you're looking at 2½ inches. And remember, as again I said, you would push the legs into the ground so it's even lower profile. As before, we have to wait 30 seconds to a minute for the stove to prime and then the flames to start to come out, ready for cooking. So as you can see, the flames have started to bloom. 15 ounces taken from the same jug of water. So 6 minutes, 13 seconds, 0.15.